Escape Room opens this weekend, but will it make you want to escape the theater? We'll tell you right here on Screen Junkies News. I'm Dan Murrell, and I nailed that on the first take.
You nailed it. One take, Dan. I'm Roth Cornett. Let's talk about this, the first of the year.
First 2019.
First of 2019, directed by the gentleman who gave us the first of 2018, which was Insidious.
Yes.
The Last Key, same director.
That's true. Oddly enough. The first movie I saw in 2017, by the way, The Bye-Bye Man.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe I need to rethink the movies that I see first every year.
This is the one that's on the table for us, Dan.
That's true.
We feast where we are able.
It's literally the only
The
thing
only one
on the table this weekend in wide release.
Yeah.
As far as new movies go.
What did you think?
You know, I got about 45 minutes or an hour into this movie. I was sitting there thinking, this is really a surprise for me. Like, this is a surprisingly fun, well-designed, kind of thriller. Not one of the best movies of the year, but certainly more than I might have expected going in. I was 100% on board. I liked the design, the production design. I sort of liked the little mysteries that they were setting up and stuff. And then it just collapsed in on itself like a dying star. Like scenes started unfolding, and every scene that was in sequence from one to the other was worse than the one that came before it. Until by the end of it, I just was sitting there going like, "Oh man, we almost made it." And I don't know if it was a result of a studio giving too many notes or not enough notes, because the first 45 minutes to an hour of this movie I thought are really strong and kind of fun. It's like Saw meets Cabin in the Woods type thing.
Saw, I think the likenings are, it's Saw, there's a movie called Cube. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
Yeah.
There is Final Destination, in that it's just setting up creative ways to kill people and give that visceral thrill. All of those, I think, are The Game, Michael Douglas.
Definitely.
All of those sort of fall into this. It's playing a little bit thematically on our paranoia about nameless, faceless, rich oligarchs or entities or corporations or what have you invading our privacy and playing with our lives, right? Like,
pretty
fundamentally
much.
It's playing with that subconscious fear made manifest in this game that I don't know if you've ever done an escape room that some of us enjoy, which is set up an impossible challenge. Only in this case, life and death is at stake. It's a really simple, silly premise.
It is.
I think as that silly premise, it was entertaining enough. The problem for me is that the PG-13 rating, which normally I think we make much ado about ratings, took out the teeth. And so when you're setting up elaborate kills that are meant to kind of like hit that visceral, creative, dark, cathartic satisfaction, you don't really get it. You get right up to the point and you sort of get an idea of it, but you don't really get it.
I agree. It was hamstrung in the sense that it may have had a little bit more of a visceral thrill, particularly in retrospect, seeing it as a whole. That maybe that would have been enough, probably not to tip me over the edge, but just kind of in the way that Final Destination does. It's all about the kills.
Final Destination 5 is a ton of fun to watch.
They all are a lot of fun to watch. They're varying degrees of good, but they're all a lot of fun to watch. But for me, it was even more so that I was actually invested in. I thought it was a very cleverly designed movie. There's a room that's upside down that I thought was a very effective sequence. There's a room that's hot. There's a room that's cold, and I thought that they were playing with interesting ways of engineering how this would be an actual escape room, and then that kind of deadly twist.
Yeah.
When you get to the end game. More so than the teeth being out of it with the kills, when you get to the end game and they start making revelations, that's where it felt like to me a movie that knew 2/3 of the way through, but couldn't figure out how to end it, or somebody had said like, well, it can't be that simple. You've really got to make this complicated. And you were already stretching the boundaries of believability, but just to completely stretch that, and then they add a scene, after the movie should have ended, and then they add a scene after that scene after the movie should have ended, and it just progressively gets worse until all the goodwill, and it really did earn me a lot of goodwill. All the goodwill that it had earned for me from the first part of the movie was gone by the end of it, because it just seemed like it was like, you know, adaptation,
Yeah.
where there's a point in the movie where it's obvious that Nicolas Cage, the brother Donald, started
Yeah.
writing the movie.
Oh, yeah.
This movie feels like that. It
Yeah.
was like 2/3 of like a really effective little escape room thriller, and then somebody came over and just wrote the last third of the movie, and it was just like, what is this?
Well, I think that the concept, I think to your point, what they had and what the structure had was a concept. It was a strong concept, and I think you're right. It's designed well. Visually, it works. It's very silly, but it's entertaining, and I agree. Like, it's sort of you're taking the journey of being in that room, and what would I do, and how would I react, and what's going on, and what do these people have in common or not. All of that kept me engaged enough watching the movie. But you're right. It tacks on two basically after credit scenes before the credits. And really, really, really deflate. It could have ended where it ended, and you could have been left with a question.
Sure.
You know? Even then, it would have over-explained what was going on
Way
by a fair
over-explained,
bit.
yeah.
You know, it's like Dr. Exposition coming in, and really the only purpose is to tell you exactly what's going on.
Yeah.
Very inelegant. But then it gets even more inelegant twice over.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate and setting up a sequel clearly, which maybe it'll get. We'll see.
My screening last night, it was a Thursday night screening. It was very full.
There's
so
nothing else out there.
there's literally
nothing
nothing
else
opening this
yeah.
weekend. So I'll be anxious to see what the box office results are. But for me, it can't be a recommendation. I thought the first part of this movie had a really fun kind of Agatha Christie, and then there were none type thing going for it. It's a very simple story element of just like there's 6 strangers, and then there's 5, and then there's 4, and who's the last one left.
But they
And that-
telegraph that.
and that was working for me.
Yeah.
And then when they decided to say like, but it's all part of this complicated, that's when it completely lost me. And so even though I did enjoy parts of this movie, can't recommend it.
Yeah, I would say my only other structural complaint about it is there's a bookending aspect to it, which is okay. But the problem is the characters that are introduced, the way they're introduced, almost exactly I could have predicted the order with which they went based on that alone.
Yeah.
They told me exactly who was going to be important through the bulk of the movie with the way they were introduced, and exactly who wasn't.
Yeah.
Exactly who was a red shirt.
Yeah.
So that's an unfortunate aspect, I think, too, in terms of. But he does an okay idea of creating tension outside of that, that you can tell who's going to die in any given sequence.
Yeah.
You know. But yeah, I can't really recommend it. Other than I can't recommend that you spend your money on it. I do think that for what it is, which is a very silly premise, it's entertaining enough. But you could watch this at home.
Yeah.
Really watch this at home, and there's plenty of good movies that you could still be catching up on that are still in theaters now.
That's true.
Lots of them.
So not an abysmal showing, but some things to love, but a lot of things not to love.
Throw it on at home.
Yeah, throw it on at home. Not a big recommendation really from either one of us. That's our first review for 2019,
Yeah.
Roth. Well, at least for theatrical movies. So many more to go.
So many.
And we'll be here to review as many of them as we can.
Yeah.
Right here on Screen Junkies News.
Big one coming up next week.
Oh yeah, big one. Can't wait for that one to break. Bye.